So you call yourself a Microsoft 365 admin. How can that possibly be when you're not using these amazing tools and features that come part of Microsoft 365? It's insane. What on earth am I talking about? Let's find out. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. So nice to see you. I've not seen you for ages. I've been on vacation and I've also been on various conference duties around the world. So nice to be back, and I really do appreciate you dropping by, especially if this is your first time. Just to say that today's episode is sponsored by squarex.com. They produce some awesome security tools. Anyway, more about those a little bit later. On today's episode, I thought I'd check out, those little hidden gems of tools and utilities, and you think, wow, that's so cool. I didn't know that that was included in Microsoft 365, or I didn't know that that was available. Well, I've put together a little collection, and I think that this will make a real difference to your careers and also to your work, and it'll make things a lot easier as well. Now, if you haven't subscribed, as always, please bump the subscribe button up there. Come and join my channel. I would really love to have you on board. And if you've got questions and comments, as always, get those down below and I'll do my very best for you. And just to say that if you'd like a little bit more, why not consider signing up to my Patreon site? Here you'll get access to full Microsoft courses, monthly Zoom calls, and so much more. Details down below. Okay, so I think without any further ado, let's jump in and check out these cool features, and there are some pretty good ones here. Stay tuned. I'm coming into Microsoft 365 and into the Admin Center, and one of the most annoying things about Microsoft 365 is the Admin Center. There are so many different portals that you have to know, and for example, even in the security pane, there are additional portals within the portals. So finding stuff is really difficult. Well, don't worry anymore. Simply open a new tab in Microsoft Edge and type in Centro 365. This is a free add-on for Microsoft Edge that will just absolutely blow you away, I gotta say. So simply go in and say, hey, I want to get the extension. Say, yes, I want to add the extension for Microsoft 365, and it's now been installed. Okay, so once you've installed the extension, you simply come back into Edge here, and if you click into the extensions and you want to enable that Centro 365, and you can see we now have a little icon here. So once enabled, the extension is super easy to use. Simply come in here and you can see that we now have access to over 18 different portals and 625 different shortcuts that you can use. Now, if you want to customize, well, you can see, first of all, they're all in the various categories, even including things like the Azure portal. You've got Lighthouse there if you're a vendor. You've also got Defender XDR, Cloud Apps, the various tools here. And you've also got the favorites bar here as well. So you can simply come into the favorites, you can edit the favorite, put in a title and simply copy and paste the URL in. Super easy to use there. Now, in addition, you've also got things like the admin portals here. So as you can see, if I need to add in a user, it simply jumps into the active users pane, and it can really save you an awful lot of time, this. The other thing that I really like as well is that you can also go into the little settings bar here, and you can actually edit the various settings, and you can choose basically the admin portal that you want to customize. And you can see you can switch these off. So if I don't use Lighthouse, of course, I can just simply go and switch off the features that you don't need. And that was one of the things that I always it bugged me a little bit about Microsoft 365. They keep promoting functions and features that, you might not have a subscription to or a license for. And they kind of clutter the dashboards up. So using this, it's really nice. You can simply go in and just switch those features on and off there. You can also, as well as choosing the sections that you want, you can also edit the various sections here as well. You can obviously choose the search style, whether you want it kind of compressed. You can have this global, or you can have a more kind of focused view. And of course, if you're using the same kind of Edge or Chromium based browser on your different platforms, then you're going to find things a lot easier to use there. So I really like that. So as I say, really super easy to use. Definitely check this out. It's going to save you so much time. And I got to say, take my hats off to the guy for coming up with this. That's Centro 365. Absolutely rocks. Check it out today. Now, of course, if you're not a fan of all the various portals, you can always use PowerShell. And PowerShell is exactly that. It's a PowerShell. And of course, a lot of the functionality comes from various modules. Now, typically, if you're using Windows 10, Windows 11, you can install PowerShell, or in most cases, you will have PowerShell, both in 32-bit and 64-bit versions. We also, of course, here in the portals, we have the Cloud Shell feature as well. And this is where you can essentially come in here and you can edit everything. Typically, you can import the modules directly from here as well. Now, although this is really useful, often the problem with PowerShell is not knowing where the modules are and what their functionality is. So a great resource, may I recommend this highly, is the PowerShellGallery.com. And in here, you'll literally find hundreds of thousands of different scripts. So in here, you can simply type in what you're looking for. So for example, if I was looking for a script on DNS, you can see it now provides you with DNS. And the thing about this is also you can then filter. So, obviously you'll get you want to refine your search, of course. So, is it a filter for Windows? What is it for? Is it for a DNS resource? And again, it will refine your search accordingly. So once you've got that, you simply go to the package. It will tell you how to install the module, and then simply you just copy that, paste that in, and you're pretty much good to go. So I got to tell you that I love this feature. PowerShell Gallery, basically it's a complete repository, hundreds of thousands of PowerShell scripts, modules, and so on. Definitely check it out today. Today's sponsor is SquareX.com. Detect, mitigate, and threat hunt. For the ultimate in-browser detection and response, visit them today at SquareX.com. So next is one of my absolute favorites, and it still amazes me how many people don't know about this. Now, I'm sure you're all familiar with the fact that you can go in here into Microsoft Teams in the admin center, and this is ultimately where you can administer all of your users and all of your teams, and everything looks great. I've got to say, actually, the recent Teams updates, the portals are looking really nice. But Teams is so much more than just a collaboration platform. It's an entire ecosystem now. So if I jump over here to, for example, within Microsoft Teams, you know that we can come down here and you've got all of these different apps that you can add in. And there are literally thousands of third-party apps that you can bring in now. But one essential one that you definitely want to bring in is the admin. And again, I can simply click this in, simply add in the admin app, and you can now see instantly I don't need to flip between the admin portals, and I can manage everything here. And this is also perfect if you want to assign the Teams admin role to a particular user. They can come in here, they can manage all of the meeting settings, they can manage profiles, that you've got all the different teams, the customization, and also managing, for example, things like subscriptions as well. So from just a single click, you can bring in the admin center directly into Microsoft Teams. Absolutely wonderful. Now, one of the features that you'll need to understand as an admin is that many Microsoft tools have settings within settings. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to pop into settings in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. I'm going to come into organizational settings, and there are some super important things here that you need to know. Well, first of all, let me give you an example of why you would need to come in here. If I just scroll down here and come into reports, in here we have a report called usage. So I can come into the usage report here, and you can see it's at the moment it's showing me that I have an active user, which is probably myself. So I'm going to scroll in, and you can see I get a log. But the problem with the log is it doesn't mean anything. It's completely anonymous. And Microsoft do this right throughout quite a lot of their reporting tools. So with that in mind, what you're going to need to do is just pop back into that admin center. You need to come back into those organizational settings. And if you scroll down, you will find a section here called reports. And sure enough, display concealed user group and site names on all reports is enabled. Simply remove this and then click save. The other thing that you might want to do is make report data available to Power BI. So that can cause a lot of frustration if those settings haven't been enabled. So of course, now what I simply do is I now come back into the reporting area. So if I just go back into that same menu again, and we can take a look at it. So now, of course, if I just come back in and I go back into that reports, back into the usage report, open that again, now you'll see it means so much more. Now I can understand why a number of companies might not like that. They might want anonymous reporting, but needless to say, it is on by default. And it's just one of those things that you probably want to take a look at anyway. So the other thing that I want to do is, again, just on the subject of those settings, let me just talk about some really quite kind of important settings that you're going to need to go in and just make sure that they're enabled just for additional security. So I'm going to come in here into my settings page, back into organizational settings, and there are just some really useful things in here that you may have easily missed. So things like account linking. So Microsoft have been going through a process of, for example, linking personal and Entra accounts together. You can switch that on and you can enable that. If I scroll down, other things that we've got here, you've also got Microsoft 365 groups. So again, another feature of groups, Microsoft 365 groups are great. But one of the issues with groups is that often users will create a group, but they won't include an owner in the group. And the problem with that is that later, if you want to do any kind of administration or any kind of management on it, it can be frustrating for those users. So we have a feature here called ownerless groups. So I can simply click onto that and I can customize a policy here. So I can basically say all active members will be invited. And you can specify how many numbers, you can specify only certain members of a group and so on. And essentially they're going to be notified for the next 4 weeks. And it's basically going to say, hey, it's coming from this particular user. And you can see we now have this kind of cool template. And it's using the kind of admin names here. So percent username, or dollar username and dollar group name. This is really useful because what it does is it then supplements that name for the actual user's name, and it will then go out and send that invitation. So you can specify this just for specific groups, of course, or all groups, which is what I'm going to go ahead and do. So that's an example of just some of the settings in here that you're going to want to take a look at. And it doesn't stop there either. So for example, I can scroll down here And you can see that we also have things like Microsoft Teams and, in fact, I'll go into that one. So here in Microsoft Teams, for example, as you know, a Microsoft 365 group can be promoted to become a Microsoft team. You can actually, this is kind of the magic button here. If you want to switch off Teams for all users, you can do that. But likewise, if you don't want guest access, that's how you can switch, if you don't want your users inviting guests and so on. Multi-factor authentication. So multi-factor authentication is now mandatory, of course, in Microsoft 365. Microsoft have been rolling that policy out for the last few months. Now, the other thing that we've also got here, if I just scroll down, is these SharePoint settings. Now, you can either go into the default admin center, so you can either go into the SharePoint Admin Center, or you can set, these are the default tenant settings for sharing, for example, OneDrive and SharePoint and so on. So you can see here, and the thing about this, and it differs from the SharePoint Admin Center because it's in reverse. So basically anyone can share, potentially guests as well. So that means if you share a file or a folder, a guest could then reshare that. You don't want that. New and existing guests. That means that in SharePoint and OneDrive, new and existing guests, so guests that an admin has created, or for example, that you've invited in Teams, will be able to access those resources. Existing guests only, this is in a secure environment where, for example, there's a requisition process. So if you want to invite a guest, you need to put in a request process. And then you might say only people within your organization. And this is the default tenant settings. I would not recommend that. You really kind of restrict the whole platform. Probably something like that would be better suited for you. So again, I'm going to go ahead and save that. Other things in here, things like what's new in Microsoft 365. You can come in to Microsoft 365 and you can add in some kind of release notes here for a particular product. And this is release information. So again, always keep useful to keep yourselves up to date there as well. So as I said, the settings, really important, certainly for configuration. And finally, I just want to bring you back here into the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. And if you haven't noticed it, you'll notice that we have an All Admin Centers option at the very bottom of the page. The other thing that I just want to mention is that there are some quite useful tools in here as well. Universal Print. So if you manage devices in Intune, for example, Windows 10, Windows 11, and you're using Universal Print enabled printers, networked printers, then this is a fabulous tool that you can go in and essentially add those network aware printers, and you can manage them right throughout Microsoft Azure, including not just virtual machines, but also machines in Intune as well. So definitely check that out. Really super useful, that, by the way. Now, you'll also notice that you can deploy apps, of course, to Microsoft 365, which is, again, super useful. But did you know you can also customize, for example, Microsoft Office itself? That's the Office that you push out to your users. Now, in here, this is the Microsoft App Admin Center. And we have two tools. You've got Office Policies and also Device Configuration as well. In addition, you also get an inventory of your devices, particularly useful for small businesses, this, I think. So I'm going to pop in here to Policy Configurations. I'm going to create a new policy, and I'm just going to call this, for example, Policy 1. You can put in a description, and I'll click Next. And it then says, is it for all users, specific users and groups, or is the configuration applying to users access documents anonymously? So I can create a guest policy here for external guests as well. I'm going to keep this simple and create one for all users. So unlike group policy in Microsoft Active Directory, you can see what they've done is they've basically got all the different policy settings here. But it's okay, don't worry about it. You can easily just come in, and if you type in Microsoft Word, you can now see that the policies are for Microsoft Word, and it shows you at the moment there are 75 different settings. For example, if I change that filter, of course, I can put in a new filter. I can clear that filter. And you can see with the filters, you can also choose the OS, the platform, the application itself. And essentially, all you do is basically come in to the actual policy here, or the option, and you can basically see that you're essentially configuring the registry setting. So in essence, when the user then downloads Microsoft Office, it will then apply those settings for that user. How cool is that? So definitely come and check this out. This is, as I said, this is the Office App Admin Center. Fantastic feature. Check it out today. So there you have it, my little collection of tools, tips and tricks for Microsoft 365 admins. Hey, listen, I really hope you found that useful. If you did, give me a big thumbs up, and questions and comments, as always, get those down below, and I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today. Just a quick thanks to my sponsor today, squarex.com. You guys are awesome, and thanks very much for visiting, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Hey, thanks so much for dropping by today. Here's a couple of videos that you may enjoy, and while you're here, go ahead, click on the subscribe button and you won't miss out.